Hey guys, this is me, Michael, again. This is Earthworm Gym 2. This is a pretty long video. This is probably the longest I've ever recorded, and I have no idea why it took so long to record this, because usually my videos aren't that long, and I guess at the time people are looking forward to this game, but after playing it now, I think the first Earthworm Gym was a lot better. I think this game was highly anticipated, but this game is more of a collection of mini-games really than anything. The game first starts off like the first game, then it goes to all these obscure like mini-games and stuff like that. Well, they're technically levels, but I call them mini-games because it's completely different, and I think people were expecting more platforming than anything. There are platforming levels here, but not nearly as much. Now, the first game did have, I guess, a little bit of variety, but I wouldn't really call it like a handful of mini games because there's only like two. There was that booger bungee cord level with major mucus, and then there was that part where you fly your little rocket ship and chase Scarecrow, or you're racing against them or something like that. Now this game is kind of weird for the sake of being weird. I think it kind of feels forced in this game, where it's not really funny and there's no rhyme or reason. At least with the first one, it was a lot of the stuff was explained to their story. This one's just weird to be weird, and there's no explanation and justification. Just like that stupid bubble gun, or I'm not using it right or something. I don't even know. But it's absolutely useless to me, as you can see. It didn't do much. As you can see, you now have Snot as a, I guess, what would you call that? I don't even know. It's kind of like a little grappling hook thing. But to be honest, like, your whip did the same thing in the first game, so it kind of feels unnecessary. But Snot, I guess he was added in the cartoon at the time when this came out. There's a cartoon series, and they came out with toys and everything, because the first game was like a major, huge success. Now, one thing that's better about this game, the difficulty was toned down a bit, because the first game was crazy hard when you got into the later levels. Now, I appreciate the bagpipe music and everything, the grannies falling down. Like, this is kind of cool and quirky. The first level pretty much does it right. There's a Saturn version of this game too. There was originally going to be a PS1 version, but at the time Sony wasn't really releasing a lot of 2D games. Everything they wanted, I guess, to promote their system to be in 3D. So Saturn got most of the 2D games. Saturn was better at 2D anyway than the PlayStation. They weren't as good as pushing the polygons. When I first played this game, this part frustrated the hell out of me. When I first rented this game, I kept on getting hit, and the grannies would make me go all the way back down and start from scratch. I originally wanted to do the Sega CD version of the first game, which has superior music. It has extra levels, some good, some bad. Like, I don't like the levels where there was like levels where you didn't have your suit on and you're just a worm, and it was really slow and kind of pointless. But then there's other levels where they actually had new enemies and everything. And then usually the levels where you're a worm were basically extended. I wanted to show you that, but I just couldn't get it to work. Again, like, my Sega CD doesn't work, so the only way I have to show you now is to play my disc on an emulator or whatnot, and it doesn't always do the best job. But I'm going to continue to try to show you some more Sega CD games, and I'm really thinking that I might do a whole playthrough of the Snatcher videos, because I've enjoyed it so much. It's just hard to make those interesting because of the text space, and I don't know if you guys like to read or not, but I might make them for me because I just like the game so much. Maybe later on I can just watch the videos if I don't feel like playing the actual game. But yeah, this whole channel is shaping up nicely because I'm finally starting to get some variety. I eventually want to get a a video capture box so I can show you better video of PlayStation 3 and other systems like that. This game has really good animation. It's a shame that everybody's looking forward to this. Like, this is not a bad game by any means. I just feel like it wasn't as good as the first one. The first one to me would be a perfect platformer if it didn't, like, if they would have lowered the difficulty a bit. This game kind of ends abruptly too. Unfortunately, we won't see the ending. Like, I can finish this game if you guys want, if you feel like you absolutely need to see the ending or have my take on it, because obviously you can type in the ending and I'm sure somebody else already have it recorded. Like the cows, I don't know what's it with the Earthworm gem universe, but cows are always a joke. There was actually a sequel to this game, by the way. It's called Earthworm Gem 3D. Rockstar actually published it, but I think that it wasn't like the Rockstar that made Grand Theft Auto. Maybe it was, but I don't think so. Rockstar, around the time Earthworm Gem 3D came in, it was almost like a budget title like system. I mean, the games cost like a normal price, but the production values weren't very high in it. And they had the guy who did the voice of Earthworm Jim in the cartoon to do the voice in that game, which was, I think his name's Dan Costello. It's the same guy that does Homer Simpson. And the game was kind of lame, and I think that's why they never really came out with a third one. It wasn't really bad, but it was like every other 3D platformer back in the day, which was a fetch a quest. This level is technically, I guess, impressive, but I really don't like it. It's kind of annoying with the time limits and stuff like that. Like when I first played this level, when I first played this game, I had a lot of trouble beating it. Maybe it's just because I sucked. I don't know. I had trouble. I was surprised I didn't have trouble when I played it for this video. I actually did a pretty decent job. This level's kind of gross with little maggots and stuff like that. I think it hits close to home because I've had problems with ants before, and it's a lot like this where they have their little white grubs or larvae. Maybe they're termites, I don't know, because they got like big fangs. I'm colorblind, so I have trouble seeing those scarecrow statues a lot of times. Thing about the Sega Genesis, they don't have the biggest color palette in the world. It's like up to 64 colors, so sometimes the background blends in when I play these games. Now, anything covered with this boogery mesh, you can use your snot grappling hook sidekick for that. Like, I guess because of the cartoon series, I don't know why they added them, because like in the first game, you just use your head like a whip and go on hooks and stuff like that. But yeah, I can see how the whole anthill level is technically impressive, where the floor goes up and you can carve in and stuff like that, but I'm not a terribly huge fan. Like, some people might like the whole concept where just about every level plays completely different. It's not the same level over and over again, but there's a part of me that misses just straight up platforming from the first one. Like, you start playing these weird levels and you start to miss the whole platforming part. There's only a few levels that have the platforming. Literally, there's only like maybe like 4 levels that are platforming. The rest are like completely different, and you just start to miss it after a while. And there's a lot of rehashes of the next level that's coming up, but I won't spoil it for you, so I can have something to talk about now, because this video is fairly lengthy, because I kind of want to give you a taste of the different gameplay and on the levels. I'm saying this video is lengthy. I'm hoping YouTube will let me have this whole video in one shot. They tell me how much I can record over, but they don't tell me what my limit is, so I honestly don't know what my limit is. I just know I haven't passed it so far. I almost feel like a sculptor in this level, which is super cool. I think this level would be a lot more laid back if it didn't have that crazy time limit. never been a terribly huge fan of time limits. They've always stressed me out. I'm glad that's something that's kind of faded away with time. I know some people probably complain that games are easier now, but I like it. Like, I definitely don't miss the days of dying over and over again and wanting to chuck my controller against the wall. Now, granted, there are some games out there that are like that, like the Devil May Cry, the Bayonetta series, and stuff like that. Castlevania, the new one, that was pretty tough too. As hard as those games are, like, there's so many 2D games that are from this era that are so much harder. I've never been good at like those kind of 3D games too much. Like, I can beat the God of War series. I always felt like games like Devil May Cry and stuff like that, like, were always kind of cheap because when you push block, it doesn't do it eventually. And when God of War came out and had that mechanic where you push block, he stops everything he's doing, doesn't finish the animation, and push block. So that makes those games a lot more easier now and accessible. But like, most of those crazy action 3D games remind me of these older games here where it's just crazy hard, but it's not nearly as common. Most games you can finish these days, which is good, because games cost so much money now. You want to get as much out of it as possible. Like, I already made a video of the new Mortal Kombat. I can't believe how crazy hard, like, the bosses are. Like, Shao Kahn, like, that's so stupid they made it so hard. Like, to me, that's like an outdated concept. If you want it that hard, just make it an option, don't make it mandatory. And that's one thing. Like, this game is pretty fair when it comes to difficulty and stuff like that, opposed to Mickey Mania. You guys saw how hard that was. Like, on the first level, it was already asking you to do things that the average game would maybe ask you to do on level 4 or 5. There's no easing into that game whatsoever. But again, like, you learn a skill set after trial and error. You start to get good. Like, I think that's part of my problem. I'm used to playing these easier games, and then I play something that's older and it's like a lot harder and less forgiving. Here's another obscure character. I do like the design though, the whole unicycle idea. Even though it's not really funny, like, this game is kind of trying to force the weirdness, I think. Because everybody's like, oh, it's so unique as the first game, but the first game had a rhyme and reason to all the weirdness. This game's just weird to be weird, and I just think it feels forced. Like, I always felt like this game didn't feel like it was finished. Especially the way it ends. Like, this game just ends. You think there's another level coming on, and it just ends. And look up the ending for this game, and if you guys really want to see my take on the ending, send me a comment, and I'll be more than happy. Make this channel a little bit more interactive. The one on the Saturn, I think the cows say different things, but every single level, like on the 16-bit versions, they say well done. Oh, Puppy Love, I hate these levels. And what sucks about Puppy Love, it doesn't stop at round 3. There's rounds after round 3. And they recycle this. Every few levels you gotta play this darn level. It's almost like they had a deadline they had to keep up to, so they had to reuse assets. And I think that's why it took so long for the third game to come out, and different people made the third game, so it didn't feel the same at all. And I don't know if Earthworm Jim will ever come out with any kind of sequel after the third game. They came out with these weird sequels on the Game Boy Color, but they're atrocious. I mean, they look bad by NES standards. So I don't even consider that, like, part of the canon, although I don't know if you could consider anything part of the Earthworm Jim canon. It's so bizarre and nothing really makes sense. I do like the scaling of that house in the background. It creates an illusion that they're in 3D of both houses, actually. I do like the whole squishy goo puddle that these puppies make when they fall. It's gross and has charm to it. Now, I hadn't played this in a while, so I didn't know exactly what to do with the bomb. Obviously that was not the thing to do with the bomb. The hand-drawn animation of this is really nice. It just looks like a big marshmallow. Just want to take a bite out of it. Actually, that's a lie. I hate marshmallows. The texture throws me off terribly. My aunt sent chocolate rabbits from California. I went to go try one. It was a dirty trick. I went to bite into it, and it was filled with marshmallows. It was nice she sent them, and I'm sure somebody else likes marshmallows, but I wasn't expecting it. I took one from the team and swallowed it, although I felt like I was almost swallowing a cyanide pill. It was so gross. But that's just because I don't like marshmallows. It's just something weird about like how big a marshmallow can be and weigh absolutely nothing. It's like Splenda. Have you guys ever held a bag of Splenda? It's so weird. You have this big bag and it weighs nothing. It's like that stuff has to be made with witchcraft or something. Because it just doesn't make any sense. As you can see, this is what you're obviously supposed to be doing with the bomb. I don't know why I didn't think of it the first time. I thought maybe it'd blow up the doghouse. Like, I haven't played this game in ages. And I guess when you get the ripe age of 26, which I'm sure a lot of you are thinking it's young, a lot of you are thinking it's old, but I don't remember as much. Then again, this game never really... This wouldn't be on a top 10 list, so this is by no means a bad game. Like, if I were to review it back in the day, I would have gave it like a 7. I think that's a fair score. The graphics, I think they focus more on the graphics than like actually finishing the game, because the graphics are super good on this. This was towards the end of both systems' life cycle. Like the Super Nintendo obviously lasts a little bit longer because they had the Donkey Kong countries and the Chrono Triggers and stuff like that. But this is definitely towards the Sega Genesis, like, end of its life cycle. Like, any respectable game would stop at round 3, but not this game. I got really relieved. I was like, oh, it's finally, I forgot that these things last flipping forever. I have no idea what the gems do. It doesn't look like it gives you extra life. I thought Peter the puppy was a great name. I actually had his action figure at Psychros. I had Evil the cat, which is in this game you won't see, unfortunately, but Evil the cat's best cameo appearance was in the first Earthworm gem, where you had to kill all his 9 lives, and they actually spoke out the dialogue every time you took one of the lives. At least in the Sega CD version, that's the version I had, like, but I'm pretty sure they did in other versions. Let's see, I was disgusted when I saw round 4. Psycho starts to not play either. He starts getting crazy with these puppies. I'm gonna start painting the floor with them, unfortunately, by accident. I had to sacrifice that life. I'm trying not to get mauled by a Peter puppy. I love that sound though. I don't know what that yellow goo is unless they have jaundice or something. Like, this is just like Contra with puppies right there. See, every time, like, Peter the puppy's like Hulk. Every time he gets mad, he turns into this monster. No, I'm not making it up. It's not like a crappy lame joke. It's actually part of the storyline. A lot of weird characters. I'm trying to think of half of their names too. I can't remember them. I know there was Queen Slug for her, but I can't remember if she was in this one or not. She had like a way longer name, or it was like Pulsing something, blah blah blah, Festering. It was a really long name, Slug for a butt. And then there's Princess What's Her Name. She's definitely in here. You'll see reference to her. That cow with the smile. Creepy. Here's another level that makes absolutely no sense. There's no explanation. Nothing in the instruction manual. He just turns into an amphibian. At least as far as I remember in the instruction manual, but I'm pretty sure because I was I'm like, what is this? The classical music's a nice touch though. I'll give him that, and the animation of his little throat waddling, I really appreciate. This game was more about just being weird in graphics, but they just really, I don't even think they cared as much about the gameplay, which sucks because this game definitely had potential. You can't touch the sides, the little, whatever the heck those things are supposed to be. Like borders it. I know it's supposed to be like some living thing that would be like in a coral reef or something. Well, you think amphibians would live in freshwater, but that's a different story. There might be saltwater amphibians. I'm not sure. I'm not an amphibian expert. I mean, if we want to go that route, we could also question why there's pinball parts in here. Two little throat waddle, there you go. It never gets old for some reason. Kind of hurt. No, I don't know what the purpose of those sheep are. I think they're sheep. I don't know what the worm does, but I'm going to get it. It might be a continue when you open up your can of worms. I couldn't tell you. Yeah, those little pieces, they hurt you. I thought it was wool. You think wool wouldn't hurt, but maybe amphibians are allergic to it. I have no idea. I keep on calling him an amphibian. I just realized this whole time he's like a newt or a salamander. When I do these improvisational commentaries, I'm kind of always out of it. One of these days I'm just gonna try it, like I guess like Classic Game Room stuff like that does, is write it down, but I don't know, there's charm to just talking and watching and stuff like that I think you don't get. That's why I think I started to do it, because I liked watching the improvisational videos and enjoyed them a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, I like all the videos, but there's a certain charm I appreciate about like just the improvisational ones versus like being clever and witty and reading something instead of just saying what's on your mind. And just if you say something witty, it's there and awesome and funny. I don't know, it's just more organic. Like sitting on a couch and hanging out with somebody versus like hanging out with the most clever person in the world. Doesn't have to think because they're reading a script. Fortunately, I thought that was a border, so I went down. So I'm basically going to do a huge circle, unfortunately, but with style and class, sprinkled with some grace. But hey, that's me. It's almost from, looks like those Simon Says games. Funny I should mention that there's actually kind of a Simon Says game at the end of this. There we go. Going up. There we go. One pass through the pencil. That's my bad accent. That's how I imagine a salamander to sound like. Actually, he'd sound like a bunch of bubbles since he's underwater. Duh. Apparently you can say groovy though. But that uses a different organ. So it makes sense. I think this would be so much funnier if he, like, when he got hit and he yelled and, like, bubbles would come out of his mouth. But it was a little bit gurgled. See if they added a little bit of timing. Maybe that would cause slowdown or something. It's like, can we add bubbles? No, it's gonna jam up the Sega Genesis. He's screaming whoopee, but there's no emotion whatsoever. Here's another no rhyme or reason part in Earthworm Jim 2. Answer the questions A, B, or C, and none of them really make any sense. At least to me. Maybe this was in the instruction manual at the time. I love the way his face looks. He's shaking his head. He looks disgusting. Ooh, I guess since you're getting free crap, it's just random. This one's right though. Her name is what's her name. So maybe there is a reason to it. I just didn't know what the favorite cheese was. Now we go with Simon Says game, like I mentioned earlier. This was a precursor to Mario Party, apparently. Like I said, this game feels more like mini games than a real game. Doesn't really feel like a sequel, which is a shame. Because everybody and their grandmother was looking forward to the sequel. Maybe this game was rushed, I don't know. It had potential, and it's by no means a bad game, but it just doesn't feel finished and it doesn't feel like it should be in the same family as the first one. It just feels like a different game altogether. And we have all these other levels. And for a 16-bit game, like, doing something drastically different takes up a whole lot of space. It wasn't like it was on a CD-ROM or something like that, where you had plenty of space to add like a bunch of stuff. When you add something drastically different like this, it's going to take up a chunk of the cartridge. I missed. No. Actually doesn't matter, because I am on to the next level. Hilarious, I guess. They didn't have enough time for that whole sound file, so they had to make the audience cheer twice. Because they did not have a lengthy clip. Due to memory constraints, I guess. Like as well. They did have enough space for a taxi, so kudos on that. This is going to be the final level I'm going to show you guys. Again, completely different from anything from the first game and platforming. I unfortunately did not realize at the time that I need to get this bomb, so once I find out, I'm going to have to go back, which is kind of aggravating, but hey, it happens. It probably happens to me all the time, every time I play this too. I do not like this camera perspective. I think it's he's too far back. You really can't maneuver all that well. So I think this level could have been tweaked a little bit better to be more fun. Because this whole perspective and where he is camera-wise, I don't think works well with the game. It's super hard not to get hit because of this perspective. It does look nice though. This is during the pre-rendered craze, so I guess this is what they were trying to do, is just pour out as much pre-rendered graphics as they possibly could. Some of this looks hand-drawn though, but for the most part it looks pre-rendered. You can thank Donkey Kong Country for that. Once they started to do that, like everybody was trying to do pre-rendered stuff. Which for the most part in the Sega Genesis just doesn't do well because they only had like 64 colors. At least with Super Nintendo you could blend stuff in a little bit and it just looked better. The Super Nintendo had, I think, 256 colors compared to the Sega Genesis 64. I think the 32X added a bunch of extra colors, but as everybody knows, that was a complete failure. And it makes sense, like Sega CD, 32X, and the Saturn all in a short length of time that was in the same area. Like, I guess that would confuse anybody. I read video game magazines and I didn't know what was going on. I'm glad they had this rocket thing, otherwise I probably would have ended the video right here in frustration. I like how they made sure they put a boom in there, and just in case there's any doubt in your mind that that might not be a bomb. The good people at Shiny are looking out for us. Shiny was like a household name back in the day. That and Tommy Tellerico Studios and stuff like that did the sound for most of Shiny's games. You don't really hear from either company, which is a shame. I know the last game Shiny did that I can remember were the Matrix games. I think, if you guys watched the Jace Hall show, they had David Perry on there, which is basically the president of Shiny. He was working on like something like similar to the On Live, I guess, where you play video games off of the internet or something like that. He was working on that, but it didn't sound like he was working on any games or something like that. I can't really find too much info on Wikipedia. It's a shame. Like, they should really try to bring back this series and do something new with it. The last thing they did was that I saw Earthworm Gen-wise was they brought this to the PlayStation Network and the Xbox Live Arcade, which is super cool. That the first Earthworm Jim, it was in HD. They didn't bring this one out though, but I just think this one just didn't do that well because the first game, I hate to say it, is superior, even though it's 5 million times harder. I was never able to finish that game, but I could finish this one. But I still like that game more. This game's just weird to be weird. That game was weird, quirky, and fun at the same time. And as weird as it was, you could still follow it. It wasn't just weird to be weird. There's a rhyme and reason, like I said. I'm just rambling. I almost sound like I'm just talking to hear myself talk. I apologize. But I have to get it out of my system for my channel, for me. This UFO is a pain in the butt. Like, this makes it very hard. Like, this perspective makes it hard to even shoot this. Once you start going, you're already close to the end again. It's just a pain. This level needed some definite tweaking, in my opinion. I'm no programmer. I'm not trying to sound like that person that's sitting down criticizing everything. He's never made a game in his life, but I've played enough where I know what's fair and what's not and what needs to be worked on. I always want to work in games. Maybe one day. Probably work in the art department. I always thought I'd be a better designer. I would never program. I'd be so lousy at it. But I think I'd be good at designing and stuff like that. Try to convince people to make my games for me. It never works out because nobody wants a program for just some guy that's just throwing stuff on it. I have dreams though, damn it. After I get better off of this appendicitis, I want to start writing again and working on artwork and maybe go from there. I'd like to do something with YouTube with that stuff. I haven't decided yet, but once I have, like, I think it'll be pretty exciting. I might have to open up a new channel, but if I do that, I'll send you the link. But I think with the writing and artwork, stuff like that I'll share, will probably first initially be on this channel. So, but if that comes and like if that comes to be, like, I'll definitely let you guys know and send them posts and stuff like that. It's not going to be like a surprise you guys discover, because I know some of you might be interested and some of you not, so I'll definitely let you guys know if that comes into fruition. I hope I'm using terminal. I'm so out of it when I make these things. Alright, so that was a very long video of Earthworm Jim 2 for the Sega Genesis. Definitely check it out. It's not the best game in the world, but it's definitely fun if you just want a fun 2D shooter or platformer. So that's the video for Earthworm Jim 2. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, subscribe. There's plenty more, and I add more as much as I can. It'll be super cool. You'll love it. And if you have, thanks for subscribing. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Take care.